"Ma'am, your account is empty," said the teller, but when a single-mom CEO steps forward to help, a simple act of kindness unleashes a storm of hidden struggles, second chances, and a fight for family that will test just how far love can go. What secret will change everything next? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Through the faded kitchen curtains, morning sunlight spilled across Martha Ellison's small kitchen table, warming her weathered hands as she carefully counted the wrinkled bills from her purse for the third time. $5.37. That's all that remained until her next Social Security check. Her fingers trembled slightly as she smoothed out each dollar bill, trying to make them look more presentable. The quiet house amplified the sound of her grandchildren's footsteps upstairs as they got ready for school. Martha glanced at the nearly empty refrigerator, its bare shelves a stark reminder of her dwindling resources. The last of the milk had gone into their cereal that morning, and the bread bag held just 2 slightly stale pieces. "Grammy, do we have any more juice?" 10-year-old Tommy's voice carried down the stairs. Martha closed her eyes briefly, collecting herself. "No, sweetheart, but we'll get some today, I promise." She tucked the money back into her purse, the vinyl worn soft from years of use. There had to be something left in her account. She'd been so careful with her budgeting. The wooden stairs creaked as Tommy and his 8-year-old sister Jenny came down, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. Martha forced a bright smile onto her face. "Good morning, my loves. All ready for school?" Jenny nodded, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "Miss Peterson says we're having an art show next week. Can you come see my painting?" "Of course I will." Martha reached out to straighten Tommy's collar, noticing how the edges were starting to fray. They needed new clothes soon, but that thought would have to wait. "Now, let's get you both to the bus stop." The morning air held a hint of spring as Martha walked her grandchildren to the corner. Other parents nodded hello, and Martha tried not to notice how much newer their clothes looked, how much more confident they seemed in their financial security. She waved as her grandchildren climbed aboard the yellow school bus, waiting until it disappeared around the corner before letting her shoulders slump. Back home, Martha gathered her courage and got ready to visit the bank. She put on her best blouse, a pale blue one she'd found at the thrift store last year, and carefully applied a touch of lipstick. The mirror reflected a woman who looked older than her 62 years, worry lines etched deeply around her eyes, despite her attempts to smile them away. The 3-block walk to First Community Bank took her past the coffee shop, where young professionals typed on laptops, past the boutique, where she'd never even checked the prices. Martha clutched her purse closer, feeling the meager bills inside. She'd been putting off this visit, hoping things would somehow improve on their own. The bank's glass doors swung open with a blast of cool air. Martha joined the line, trying to stand tall despite feeling small inside. The marble floors gleamed, and the hushed conversations of other customers seemed to emphasize the gravity of her situation. She watched as people made deposits, discussed investments, planned their futures. Her own future felt as uncertain as morning fog. When it was finally her turn, Martha approached the counter with measured steps. The young teller smiled professionally, her name tag reading, Sarah. "Good morning," Martha said softly, placing her ID on the counter. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." She tried to keep her voice steady, dignified. "Of course, Mrs. Ellison. How much would you like to withdraw today?" Martha leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. $50, please. It would be enough for the essentials, milk, bread, juice, for the children. Maybe even a small treat to make up for the empty refrigerator. The teller's fingers moved across her keyboard, and Martha watched as the screen reflected in the young woman's glasses. The pause that followed lasted a fraction too long. Martha's heart began to race as Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ellison," the teller said, her voice dropping to match Martha's quiet tone. "But your account is empty." The words hit Martha like a physical blow. Heat rushed to her face, and she could feel the stares of those waiting in line boring into her back. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady herself as the room seemed to tilt sideways. "There must be some mistake," she whispered, but even as she said it, She knew there wasn't. The careful budgeting, the endless stretching of dollars, the choosing between necessities, it had finally caught up with her. Sarah's expression held genuine sympathy, but that only made it worse. "I can print out your statement if you'd like to review the transactions." Martha shook her head quickly, unable to bear the thought of examining the evidence of her failure. Behind her, someone cleared their throat impatiently. The sound made her flinch. "Thank you," she managed to say, gathering her ID with trembling fingers. Her face burned with humiliation as she turned away from the counter, feeling the weight of judging eyes. The marble floor that had gleamed so brightly now seemed to mock her with its polished perfection. Each step toward the exit felt like walking through deep water, her legs heavy with shame. She could hear the murmur of conversations resume behind her, wondering if they were talking about the poor grandmother who couldn't even keep $50 in her account. The $5.37 in her purse now felt like lead weights, a pitiful sum that wouldn't even buy enough food for one proper meal. Martha turned away from the counter, her cheeks burning with shame. The threadbare strap of her purse felt like it was cutting into her shoulder as she clutched it close, wanting nothing more than to disappear from the stares of the other customers. The polished marble floor of the bank seemed to mock her worn shoes as she took a shaky step toward the exit. "Wait." A clear, confident voice cut through the uncomfortable silence. "I'd like to help." Martha froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. A young woman stepped forward from the line, shifting a sleepy toddler on her hip. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her burgundy blazer spoke of success, but there was something kind in her eyes that made Martha pause. "Please," the woman continued, "let me cover the amount you needed." She adjusted her hold on her little boy, who buried his face in her shoulder, dark curls matching his mother's. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly," Martha's voice quavered as she protested. "I'm Elena Ramirez." The woman's smile was warm and genuine as she stepped closer, speaking softly enough that the other customers couldn't hear. "And I've been exactly where you are. Please, let me help." Martha's eyes welled with tears she desperately tried to hold back. "It's $50, she whispered, the admission feeling like sandpaper in her throat. "For groceries. My grandchildren." "Of course." Elena turned to the teller, who had been watching the exchange with careful neutrality. "Please add $50 to this lady's withdrawal." She shifted her designer purse to pull out her wallet, the movement practiced and smooth, despite the toddler in her arms. The teller's demeanor changed instantly, becoming more solicitous. "Right away, Miss Ramirez." Martha stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness. The other customers in line had turned their attention elsewhere, their earlier discomfort forgotten in the tapping of phones and shuffling of deposit slips. "Thank you," Martha managed, her voice barely audible as the teller counted out the bills. "I don't know how to repay." "You don't need to." Elena's voice was firm but gentle. "But I would love to buy you a coffee. The grocery store across the street has a nice cafe. We could talk while my little Marco here has his morning snack." Martha hesitated, clutching the $50 the teller had handed her. The money felt both precious and burning in her hand, a lifeline and a reminder of her failure to provide for her grandchildren on her own. Elena seemed to sense her uncertainty. "I remember how hard it is to accept help," she said quietly. "But sometimes a simple conversation can change everything. Besides," she added with a small laugh, "Marco here loves an audience when he has his crackers, don't you, my Joe?" The toddler peeked out at Martha with big brown eyes before hiding his face again. Something in Elena's manner, the way she spoke without pity or condescension, helped Martha find her voice. "I suppose a coffee would be nice." They walked together across the street, the morning sun warming their shoulders. The grocery store cafe was quiet at this hour, with only a few early shoppers nursing their drinks at scattered tables. Elena led them to a corner booth, settling Marco into a high chair with practiced ease. "What would you like?" Elena asked, pulling a small bag of organic crackers from her purse for Marco. "Their almond croissants are wonderful." "Just a plain coffee would be fine," Martha started to say, but Elena was already heading to the counter. She returned moments later with 2 steaming cups of coffee, a plate of pastries, and a genuine smile that seemed to push back the shadows of Martha's morning. "Now," Elena said, breaking a croissant in half and offering part to Martha, "tell me about your grandchildren. How old are they?" The pastry was flaky and buttery, and Martha couldn't remember the last time she'd allowed herself such an indulgence. "Tommy is 10, and Jenny is 8, she said, surprising herself with how easily the words came. "They're good kids. Such good kids." Elena nodded encouragingly, wiping Marco's fingers as he methodically demolished his crackers. "Being a single parent isn't easy," she said. "Being a grandparent, raising grandchildren, must be even harder." "You're a single mother?" Martha asked, looking at Elena's polished appearance with new eyes. "Yes. Marco and I were a team." Elena's smile held a hint of old pain. "His father left before he was born. I was working 2 jobs, living on food stamps, trying to figure out how to make it all work." Martha found herself leaning forward slightly. "But you seem so," she gestured vaguely at Elena's professional attire. "Put together?" Elena laughed softly. "It wasn't always like this. I started my company in my garage, coding websites between diaper changes. Some days, I didn't know how I'd buy groceries either." She paused, her expression growing serious. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. Sometimes, we just need someone to believe in us, to help us see the possibilities." Marco dropped a cracker, and it skittered across the table. Martha caught it before it could fall to the floor, earning a shy smile from the little boy. The simple interaction seemed to break something loose in her chest, and before she knew it, she was telling Elena about her daughter's struggles with addiction, about becoming a parent again in her 60s, about the constant worry over bills and the future. Elena listened intently, her dark eyes compassionate but not pitying. She asked questions that made Martha feel like her answers mattered, like her struggles were valid and her efforts recognized. The morning light grew stronger outside the cafe windows, and Marco contentedly reduced his crackers to crumbs, while Martha found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone in years. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, her perfectly manicured nails a stark contrast to the simple white ceramic. "You know," she said, "I remember the day I realized I couldn't afford both diapers and dinner." She glanced at Marco, who was now contentedly stacking sugar packets into wobbly towers. "I was sitting on my apartment floor, counting pennies from a jar." Martha nodded, recognition flickering in her eyes. "I've had those days, still do, especially near the end of the month." "I grew up watching my mama do the same thing," Elena continued, her professional polish softening as she spoke. "We lived in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. The walls were so thin you could hear the dryers humming all night long." She smiled slightly. "I used to pretend it was the ocean." "That must have been hard," Martha said softly, noticing how Elena's confident posture didn't quite hide the shadows of old struggles. "It was, but Mama taught me something precious. Dignity isn't about what you have, it's about how you carry yourself through hard times." Elena reached out to steady Marco's sugar packet tower before it could topple. "When I found out I was pregnant and Marco's father disappeared, I thought my life was over. I was working as a receptionist during the day and learning computer programming at night." Martha leaned forward slightly, drawn in by the quiet strength in Elena's voice. "How did you manage?" "1 day at a time." Elena laughed softly. "Sometimes 1 hour at a time. I'd prop my programming textbooks against my pregnant belly while I ate ramen noodles. After Marco was born, I'd code while he napped, sitting cross-legged on my garage floor because I couldn't afford a desk." "Your garage?" Martha's eyes widened. That's where Ramirez Tech Solutions was born, between load after load of laundry and midnight feedings." Elena reached over to wipe a crumb from Marco's cheek. "I started small, building websites for local businesses. Word spread. I hired my first employee when Marco was 6 months old." Martha watched as Elena interacted with her son, seeing both the successful businesswoman and the loving mother in her gentle movements. "And now?" "Now we have over 50 employees, and we're still growing." Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "But you know what I've noticed? Some of our most valuable team members are older adults who bring wisdom and life experience to the table. They just need a little help bridging the technology gap. Martha shifted in her seat, suddenly self-conscious about her own limited computer skills. I can barely use my phone sometimes. The grandkids have to help me with the settings. That's exactly what I mean, Elena said, her eyes lighting up. You understand what it's like to feel overwhelmed by technology, but you're not afraid to learn. You ask for help when you need it. She paused, seeming to consider something. Would you be interested in working with us? Martha's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Work? With computers? Elena shook her head, smiling. Not exactly. We need someone who can help our older employees feel comfortable with new technology. Someone who understands their frustrations and can explain things in a way that makes sense. Part-time? Flexible hours? Oh, I don't know. Martha set her cup down carefully, her hands trembling slightly. I haven't worked in years, not since before. Before you became a full-time grandmother? Elena finished gently. Martha, raising children is work. Some of the hardest work their island. You're already managing a household and caring for 2 growing kids. Those are valuable skills. Martha twisted her napkin in her lap. But your company. It's so professional. I wouldn't fit in. Look at me, Elena said firmly, waiting until Martha met her eyes. 10 years ago, I was crying over a jar of pennies. 5 years ago, I was coding in my garage with a baby strapped to my chest. Success isn't about where you start. It's about being brave enough to take the first step. Marco chose that moment to successfully stack his 10th sugar packet, letting out a delighted squeal that made both women smile. Why don't you come visit the office tomorrow? Elena suggested, reaching into her purse for a business card. Just to see. No pressure, no commitments. Bring the grandkids after school. We have a small playroom where Marco spends time when his daycare is closed. Martha took the card, running her thumb over the embossed logo. The paper was thick and expensive, but Elena's handwriting on the back, adding her personal cell phone number, was warm and friendly. Martha looked at the card, then at Elena's encouraging smile, and finally, at little Marco, who was now attempting to build a sugar packet pyramid. Something small but steady flickered in her chest. Not quite hope, but perhaps its beginning. Yes, I think I'd like that. To visit, I mean. Wonderful. Elena's face lit up. Shall we say 3 o'clock? That will give you time to pick up the kids from school. She pulled out her phone, typing quickly. I'll make sure security knows to expect you. Security? Martha echoed, feeling overwhelmed again. Elena laughed warmly. Don't worry. It's just Carlos. He's a grandfather himself, makes the best tamales in town, and keeps a jar of candy on his desk for all the kids who visit. As Elena gathered Marco's things and helped him down from the high chair, Martha sat still for a moment, letting the morning's events sink in. From the humiliation at the bank to this unexpected opportunity, it felt almost dreamlike. Here, Elena said, pressing a few more sugar packets into Marco's small hands to keep him occupied. Let me give you my card with the office address. She paused, noticing Martha's expression. Are you all right? Yes, Martha said slowly, surprising herself by meaning it. Yes, I think I am. Martha stood at the entrance of Ramirez Technologies, clutching her worn leather purse like a shield. The glass doors gleamed in the morning sun, and through them she could see young people hurrying about with laptops and steaming coffee cups. Her sensible shoes felt heavy as lead as she forced herself to take the first step forward. The lobby was alive with energy, phones chirping, keyboards clicking, and the steady hum of conversation. Martha smoothed her best blouse, wondering if the small flower print looked as dated as she suddenly felt it might. Mrs. Ellison! Elena's warm voice cut through the bustle. She emerged from a nearby hallway, dressed in a simple black dress that somehow made Martha's outfit feel even more out of place. I'm so glad you made it. I almost didn't, Martha admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It's all very modern. Elena's smile grew wider. That's exactly why we need you here. Come on, let me show you around. As they walked through the office, Martha noticed the curious glances from the younger employees. Some smiled and waved, their friendliness genuine if a bit uncertain. A young man with spiky hair and multiple ear piercings gave her a cheerful "good morning" that made her clutch her purse a little less tightly. "This will be your desk," Elena said, gesturing to a comfortable-looking chair and a sleek computer setup. "Don't worry, we'll get you completely trained on everything you need to know." Martha eyed the dual monitors with trepidation. "I can barely manage my flip phone, Elena. I don't want to waste your time." "You won't be." Elena pulled up a chair beside her. "Look around. What do you see?" Martha scanned the office. "Young people. Very young people." "Exactly. They're brilliant at what they do, but sometimes they forget that not everyone grew up with a smartphone in their hands. That's where you come in. You'll be our bridge." A young woman approached them holding a tablet. "Elena, do you have a minute? The new interface is giving some of our older clients trouble again." Elena's eyes sparkled. "Perfect timing, Sarah. Mrs. Ellison, would you mind taking a look?" Sarah handed Martha the tablet, which displayed what appeared to be a calendar application. Martha squinted at the tiny icons and overlapping boxes. "Well," she said slowly, "I can hardly read these little symbols. And all these colors, they're pretty. But how would someone know what they mean?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Oh, we never thought about the font size. And we should probably add labels to the color coding." "See?" Elena squeezed Martha's shoulder. "You're helping already." As the morning progressed, Martha found herself warming to her new environment. Elena had set up a small training session where Martha learned the basics of the company's internal systems. Though her fingers fumbled with the mouse at first, she discovered that computers weren't quite as frightening as she'd imagined. During lunch break, she sat in the break room, carefully unwrapping the sandwich she'd brought from home. A few young employees joined her table, and to her surprise, they asked for her opinion on making their products more accessible to non-tech people, as they called them. "My grandmother would love to video chat with me," one young man said, "but she gets frustrated with the apps. What would make it easier for someone like her?" Martha thought about her own grandchildren. Well, for starters, buttons that say what they do, instead of just symbols. And maybe a way to make everything bigger without having to know special shortcuts. The afternoon brought an unexpected opportunity. Martha noticed Mr. Jenkins, the elderly janitor, frowning at his phone in the hallway. His weathered face showed the same confusion she'd felt earlier that day. "Can I help?" she offered, approaching him carefully. "They want me to use this new app for the cleaning schedule," he explained, embarrassment clear in his voice. "Used to be all on paper. Now I can't figure out how to see what rooms need doing when." Martha felt a surge of confidence. "Oh, I just learned about something similar this morning. May I?" Together, they sat on a nearby bench, and Martha slowly walked him through the basics she'd picked up. Her own struggles with technology helped her explain things in a way that made sense to him. "Look here," she pointed. "This button that looks like a house. That takes you back to the start if you get lost. I needed that one a lot today myself." Mr. Jenkins' face lit up as he successfully navigated to his schedule. "Well, you've got a gift for teaching, Mrs. Ellison." From her office doorway, Elena watched the scene unfold. Her young son balanced on her hip. The boy, barely 3, played with his mother's necklace as Elena observed Martha's patient guidance with Mr. Jenkins. "See that, mi amor?" Elena whispered to her son, her voice filled with gentle pride. "See how Mrs. Ellison is helping Mr. Jenkins? That's why I knew. She belonged here. Kindness always finds a place." Martha's hands trembled slightly as she stirred the pot of bubbling spaghetti sauce. The familiar aroma of garlic and herbs filled her small kitchen, but tonight felt different. The weight that had pressed on her shoulders for so long seemed lighter. She glanced at the clock. 6:15 p.m. Right on schedule for dinner. "Tommy! Sarah! Time to wash up for dinner," she called out, her voice carrying through their modest 2-bedroom apartment. The patter of small feet echoed down the hallway as her grandchildren, aged 8 and 10, rushed to the bathroom. Martha smiled at their enthusiasm. They never dragged their feet when spaghetti was on the menu. She could hear them playfully arguing over who got to use the soap first. While the pasta drained in the colander, Martha's mind wandered back to her day at Elena's company. The memory of helping Mr. Rodriguez, the janitor, figure out that scheduling app made her chest swell with pride. His grateful smile had warmed her heart more than any paycheck could. "Grandma, I'm starving," Tommy announced, sliding into his usual chair at their small kitchen table. His dark hair was still damp from washing, and his sister Sarah followed close behind, her long braids swinging. "Well, you're in luck because dinner is ready," Martha said, setting down the steaming plates. The red sauce looked cheerful against the white pasta, and she'd managed to add a few meatballs, a rare treat these days. Sarah inhaled deeply. It smells even better than usual, Grandma. Maybe because Grandma's extra happy today," Tommy observed, his fork already twirling in the spaghetti. Martha settled into her chair, smoothing her worn apron. "You're right, Tommy. I have some news to share with you both." The children looked up, curiosity evident in their matching brown eyes that reminded her so much of their mother's, before the troubles began. "I got a job today," Martha announced, her voice steady despite the emotion building in her throat. "A real job, with nice people and an office and everything." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. "Really? What kind of job?" "Well," Martha began, cutting a meatball into smaller pieces, "I'm going to be helping people learn how to use computers and phones better. There's this lovely woman named Elena who owns the company, and she thinks I can help make a difference there." "But Grandma," Tommy said between mouthfuls, "you always say you're not good with computer stuff." Martha chuckled. "That's true. But sometimes the best teachers are the ones who understand how hard it is to learn something new. And besides, I won't be alone. There are lots of kind people there to help me too." "Will you make lots of money?" Sarah asked, her practical nature showing through. "Sarah," Martha gently scolded, but she couldn't help smiling. "We'll have enough. More importantly, I'll be doing something that matters. Today, I helped a man learn how to use his phone to make his job easier. It felt wonderful to be useful again." "You're always useful, Grandma," Tommy protested, sauce dotting his chin. "You take care of us." Martha reached across the table to wipe his face with a napkin. "Thank you, sweetheart. But this is different. This is a chance for me to grow, to learn new things. And, maybe," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "maybe show you both that it's never too late to start something new." Sarah got up from her chair and wrapped her arms around Martha's shoulders. "I'm proud of you, Grandma. Will you still be here when we get home from school?" "Of course, honey. I'll only be working part-time, and Elena is very understanding about my schedule. You two are still my most important job." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of excited chatter. The children peppered her with questions about the office, about Elena, about what she would wear to work. Martha answered them all, marveling at how their enthusiasm made her own excitement grow. After dinner, they insisted on helping with the dishes, something they usually had to be reminded to do. Tommy dried while Sarah put things away, and Martha washed, their little assembly line working in comfortable harmony. "Can we stay up a little later tonight?" Tommy asked hopefully. "To celebrate?" Martha glanced at the clock. 10 more minutes, she conceded. "But then it's straight to bed. We all need our rest." They spent those precious extra minutes on the worn couch, Martha in the middle, with a child tucked under each arm, as she told them more about her day. She described Elena's little boy, how he played quietly in the corner of the office with his toys, and how the young people at work had welcomed her with genuine warmth. When bedtime finally came, the children didn't protest. Martha helped them through their nighttime routines, making sure teeth were brushed and faces were washed. She tucked Sarah in first, smoothing the pink comforter around her shoulders. "Grandma?" Sarah whispered as Martha kissed her forehead. "I think you're going to be really good at your new job." "Thank you, sweetie. That means the world to me." In Tommy's room, she had to search for his favorite stuffed dinosaur, which had somehow migrated under the bed. Once Rex was safely tucked in beside him, Tommy grabbed her hand. "Are you scared about the new job?" he asked, his voice small in the dim room. Martha sat on the edge of his bed. "A little," she admitted. "But sometimes the best things in life are a little scary at first. Like when you learned to ride your bike, remember?" Tommy nodded, his eyes already growing heavy. "And now I can go super fast." "That's right. Martha chuckled, kissing him goodnight. "Sweet dreams, my brave boy." After both children were settled, Martha stood in the hallway between their rooms. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the heating vent and the distant sounds of city traffic. She closed her eyes, feeling the events of the day wash over her. The humiliation at the bank seemed like a lifetime ago. Making her way to her own small bedroom, Martha caught her reflection in the mirror. The same gray hair, the same laugh lines around her eyes, but something was different. There was a spark there she hadn't seen in years. As she changed into her nightgown, Martha whispered softly to herself, "Maybe this is the new beginning I prayed for." The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Martha's living room windows as she methodically folded the fresh laundry, still warm from the dryer. The familiar routine brought her comfort after an exciting morning at her new job. A small smile played on her lips as she remembered helping another older employee master the basics of email. The sharp knock at the door made her jump. Martha wasn't expecting anyone, and the grandkids wouldn't be home from school for another hour. Setting down a half-folded towel, she made her way to the entrance. The moment she opened the door, her heart sank. Lisa stood there, her thin frame fidgeting, dark circles under her eyes, making her look older than her 34 years. Her daughter's gaze darted past Martha into the house, never quite meeting her eyes. "Where are they?" Lisa demanded, her voice carrying that familiar edge that always made Martha's stomach tighten. "The children are at school," Martha replied softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "They won't be home until I have a right to see them." Lisa pushed past her mother into the house, her movements jerky and agitated. "This is my house too, or did you forget that?" Martha closed the door quietly, watching as Lisa paced the living room, scattering the neat piles of folded laundry with her abrupt movements. "Of course I haven't forgotten, sweetheart. Would you like some tea? We could talk." "Talk?" Lisa spun around, her voice rising. "Like how you've been talking about me to everyone in town? Telling them what a terrible mother I am?" "I would never," Martha began, but Lisa cut her off with a harsh laugh. "Save it, Mom. I saw Mrs. Peterson at the store yesterday. The way she looked at me." Lisa's hands trembled as she ran them through her unwashed hair. "Everyone knows you've got my kids. Everyone's judging me." Martha's heart ached, seeing her daughter like this. She took a cautious step forward. "Nobody's judging you, Lisa. We all want what's best for the children, that's all." "What's best?" Lisa's eyes narrowed. "You think you know what's best? I'm their mother. Me, not you." The stack of carefully folded shirts toppled as Lisa swept her arm across the coffee table. Martha flinched but stayed quiet, recognizing the signs of her daughter's building anxiety. "I saw them walking to school yesterday," Lisa continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "They looked right through me, Mom, like I was a stranger, my own children." "They miss you," Martha said gently. "They ask about you all the time." "Do they?" Lisa's voice cracked. She sank onto the couch, crumpling a freshly folded sheet beneath her. "Or are you trying to make them forget me? Replace me with your perfect little life?" Martha's hands twisted together. "I would never try to replace you. You're their mother, Lisa. I'm just trying to help." "Help?" Lisa jumped up again, her face flushing. "By taking a job? Playing house with my kids while I'm trying to get my life together? I see what you're doing, making yourself look like the perfect grandmother while I'm the screw-up." "That's not true," Martha protested, her voice wavering. "I took the job because we needed the money to give the children." "They're my children," Lisa shouted, making Martha step back. "Not yours, and I want them back." The words hung in the air like smoke, choking Martha's breath. Her legs felt weak as she gripped the back of a chair for support. "I'm their mother," Lisa continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "I have rights, and I'm taking them back." Martha's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "Lisa, please, think about what's best for them right now. They need stability. They need their mother," Lisa cut in. "And I'm going to prove it. I'll get a lawyer if I have to." She strode toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "You can't keep them from me forever, Mom. They're mine." The door slammed behind her, leaving Martha standing alone in the mess of scattered laundry. Her hands shook as she bent to pick up a small t-shirt belonging to her grandson. The stability she'd worked so hard to build suddenly felt as fragile as a soap bubble in the wind. She sank into her chair, clutching the shirt to her chest, the afternoon sun now feeling cold against her skin. The peaceful routine of her day lay shattered around her like the scattered laundry, and for the first time since starting her new job, fear crept back into her heart, the fear of losing everything she held dear. Martha's hands trembled slightly as she pulled open the glass doors to Elena's office building. The morning sun caught the brass handles, warming them beneath her fingers. Yesterday's confrontation with Lisa still echoed in her mind, but she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. She had responsibilities now, people who counted on her. The lobby buzzed with its usual morning energy. Young professionals clutched their coffee cups, chatting about weekend plans and project deadlines. Martha's sensible shoes clicked against the polished floor as she made her way to the elevator, her badge swinging from its lanyard. "Good morning, Mrs. Ellison," called out Tommy from the security desk. His friendly wave brought a genuine smile to her face, helping to push away some of her worries. "Morning, Tommy. How's that phone tutorial working out for you?" The young guard grinned. "Thanks to you, I finally figured out how to video chat with my mom in Florida. She was over the moon, seeing my face for the first time in months." Martha's heart warmed at his words. These small victories, helping people connect with their loved ones through technology, made her feel useful in ways she hadn't expected. The elevator carried her to the third floor, where Elena's company occupied the entire space. Martha's desk sat in a quiet corner, perfectly positioned to observe the office dynamics. She settled into her chair, arranging her things just so. Reading glasses, notebook, and the tablet Elena had given her for work. "Martha!" Elena's voice carried across the office. She approached with her usual grace, despite balancing her young son on one hip and a stack of folders in her free arm. "I'm so glad you're here. We have 3 new employees starting today, all of them over 50. Would you mind showing them around?" "Of course," Martha replied, grateful for the distraction from her personal troubles. She stood, smoothing her simple navy dress. "Where are they?" "Conference room B." "And Martha?" Elena touched her arm gently. "You're doing amazing work here. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The knowing look in Elena's eyes told Martha that her emotional state wasn't as well hidden as she'd hoped. But instead of feeling exposed, she felt supported. The morning flew by, as Martha guided the new employees through company protocols and basic software training. She found herself drawing on her own recent experiences to explain things in ways they could understand. "Think of the shared drive like a filing cabinet we can all access," she explained to Barbara, a former librarian. "Instead of physical folders, we have digital ones, but the principle is exactly the same." Barbara's face lit up with understanding. "Oh, like the card catalog system, but on computers?" "Exactly," Martha beamed. These moments of connection, of breaking down barriers between generations and technology, filled her with quiet pride. During lunch, Martha sat with her new group in the break room. They shared stories about their grandchildren and swapped tips about adapting to modern workplace culture. For the first time, Martha realized she wasn't just helping others. She was building a community. Elena found her there, still chatting with Barbara long after the others had returned to work. "Martha, do you have a minute?" Elena pulled up a chair, her eyes sparkling with that look she got when she had an idea. "I've been watching how naturally you connect with people, especially those who feel intimidated by technology." Martha felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "Oh, I just remember how scared I was at first. Sometimes all people need is someone who understands their fear." "Exactly." Elena leaned forward eagerly. "That's why I think you'd be perfect to lead a basic tech skills class at your church. Nothing fancy. Just helping seniors learn the basics of smartphones, tablets, maybe some internet safety." Martha's mouth opened in surprise. "Me? Teach a class?" Her hands fidgeted with her napkin. "I don't know, Elena. I'm still learning myself." "That's what makes you perfect for it," Elena insisted gently. "You understand exactly what it feels like to be overwhelmed. You speak their language." She paused, watching Martha's face. "Just think about it, okay? No pressure." Martha nodded slowly, her mind already picturing the faces of elderly church members who struggled with their phones or avoided computers entirely. How many of them felt left behind in this digital age? How many couldn't video chat with their grandchildren or order groceries online when they couldn't drive? "I'll think about it," she promised, meaning it. The idea scared her, but it also excited her in a way she hadn't felt in years. Elena squeezed her hand. "That's all I ask. Now, let's go rescue Robert from the printer. I think I see him about to throw it out the window." As they walked together toward the frustrated employee, Martha felt a flutter of possibility in her chest. Maybe she had more to offer than she'd realized. Maybe, just maybe, she could be more than just a grandmother trying to keep her head above water. She thought of her own grandchildren, how naturally they took to technology, how proud they were when they taught her something new. Perhaps it was time to pass that feeling forward. The church basement smelled of coffee and fresh-baked cookies, a comforting contrast to Martha's racing heart. She stood at the front of the room, watching as elderly faces peered at laptop screens with mixed expressions of confusion and determination. Folding tables formed a U shape, each space occupied by a senior citizen armed with a borrowed computer. "Now remember," Martha said, her voice steadier than she felt, "the @ symbol is what makes it an email address." She demonstrated on the projector screen Elena had helped her set up. "Think of it like addressing a letter. You need all the parts just right for it to reach its destination." Agnes Peterson, 82, and wearing a bright floral sweater, raised her hand. "Martha, dear, I pressed the button, but nothing's happening." Martha walked over, her sensible shoes quiet on the linoleum floor. Her grandchildren, Tommy and Sarah, sat in the corner doing homework, occasionally glancing up with proud smiles. They had helped her practice her lesson plan all week. "Let's see here," Martha said, leaning over Agnes's shoulder. You need to press the power button first." She reached down and pressed it, watching the screen flicker to life. "There we go." A ripple of chuckles spread through the room. Agnes blushed. "Well, I suppose that would help, wouldn't it?" Martha patted her shoulder. "Don't worry. Last week I spent 20 minutes wondering why my phone wasn't working, only to realize it needed charging." This earned more laughter, and Martha felt the tension in her shoulders ease. Frank Wilson, a retired postal worker, squinted at his screen. "Say, Martha, once we get this email business figured out, could you show us how to do those video calls? My granddaughter's having a baby in Oregon, and I'd sure like to see the little one." "That's exactly what we're covering next, Frank." Martha smiled, remembering how Elena had taught her to use video chat just a month ago. Now here she was, passing that knowledge along. The next hour flew by in a blur of questions, discoveries, and small victories. Martha moved from table to table, explaining, demonstrating, and encouraging. She watched faces light up as emails were successfully sent and received. Even Mr. Henderson, who had declared computers newfangled nonsense at the start of class, managed to send a message to his daughter. "Look at that," he exclaimed, pointing at a screen. "She already wrote back." Martha felt a warm glow in her chest. These moments, seeing someone's world expand just a little bit more, made her forget about Lisa's threats, about empty bank accounts, about all the times she'd felt invisible. During the coffee break, Dorothy Chen approached Martha with tears in her eyes. "I haven't seen my sister's face in 3 years," she said softly. "She lives in California. Now I can talk to her whenever I want." She hugged Martha tightly. "Thank you." Martha blinked back her own tears. "We're all learning together," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As the class wrapped up, Martha watched her students gathering their things, chatting excitedly about their new skills. Some were already making plans to meet at the library to practice. Others exchanged email addresses, promising to send test messages to each other. Tommy and Sarah helped collect the laptops Elena had loaned for the class, carefully placing them in their protective cases. Martha overheard Sarah explaining to Mrs. Rodriguez how to remember her password, speaking with the patient confidence of a born teacher. "Same time next week?" Agnes asked hopefully, adjusting her purse strap. Martha nodded. "Elena's bringing more laptops, and we'll learn about sharing photos." "Wonderful!" Agnes beamed. My grandson's always posting pictures on that Facebook thing. Maybe I can finally see them properly. As the last of the seniors filed out, Pastor Jim approached Martha. This is exactly what our community needed, he said warmly. You've given these folks more than just computer skills. You've given them connection. Martha felt her cheeks warm at the praise. I'm just passing along what I've learned myself. Sometimes that's the most valuable thing we can do, he replied, helping her stack the chairs. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Tommy and Sarah walked on either side of Martha, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. Sarah clutched a paper bag of leftover cookies Mrs. Wilson had insisted they take home. Grandma, did you see how happy Mrs. Chen was? Sarah asked, skipping a little. She was crying. Happy tears, Tommy added wisely. Like when you watch that video of Mom singing in her high school choir. Martha's heart squeezed at the mention of Lisa, but she pushed the worry aside. This moment belonged to joy, not fear. You were really good at teaching, Grandma, Sarah continued, like how you helped Mr. Henderson when he got frustrated. You didn't make him feel silly at all. Yeah, Tommy agreed. And everyone was laughing and having fun. Not like regular school at all. Martha chuckled. Well, sometimes the best learning happens when we're enjoying ourselves. They walked in comfortable silence for a few blocks, the setting sun warming their backs. Martha watched her grandchildren's shadows stretch long before them on the sidewalk. Something had shifted inside her today, a quiet certainty that she hadn't felt in years. Sarah reached for her hand, cookie bag swinging from her other arm. I'm proud of you, Grandma. Tommy took her other hand. Me too. You're like a superhero. But instead of fighting bad guys, you fight computer confusion. Martha laughed, squeezing their hands. The weight of her worries felt lighter somehow, balanced by the joy of the afternoon, the gratitude in Dorothy's eyes, the pride in her grandchildren's voices. As they turned onto their street, Martha looked up at the early evening sky. The first stars were just becoming visible, twinkling with possibility. She thought about the room full of seniors discovering new ways to connect with their loved ones, about Elena's faith in her, about her grandchildren's unwavering support. Maybe I do still matter, she whispered, soft enough that only the wind could hear. Elena's home wasn't what Martha had expected from a successful CEO. The modest two-story house sat on a quiet suburban street, with a small front yard where cheerful marigolds lined a concrete path. A basketball hoop hung over the garage, and a collection of chalk drawings decorated the driveway. Martha's grandchildren, Tommy and Sarah, clutched her hands as they approached the front door. Before they could ring the doorbell, it swung open to reveal Elena's beaming face, her son Miguel, peeking out from behind her legs. Come in, Elena gestured warmly. Miguel has been asking every 5 minutes when you'd arrive. The interior was cozy and lived in, with family photos covering the walls and toys neatly arranged in baskets. The smell of garlic and tomatoes wafted from the kitchen, making Martha's mouth water. I hope you all like lasagna, Elena said, leading them through the house. It's my mama's recipe. We love lasagna, Sarah exclaimed, her earlier shyness forgotten. Miguel tugged at Tommy's sleeve. Want to see my Legos? I built a whole space station. The two boys raced upstairs, their thundering footsteps echoing through the house. Sarah hesitated, looking up at Martha. Go on, sweetheart, Martha encouraged. Miguel's got some dolls too, right, Elena? Elena nodded. A whole collection his cousin left here. They're in the playroom, Sarah. As Sarah scampered after the boys, Martha followed Elena into the kitchen. Pots bubbled on the stove, and a fresh salad sat ready on the counter. Elena handed Martha a glass of iced tea. Please, sit. Elena gestured to a kitchen stool. You look tired. Martha sank onto the seat, surprised by how comfortable she felt in Elena's presence. I am, she admitted. Lisa's visit yesterday. It shook me up pretty bad. Elena stirred the sauce, her face concerned. Tell me about it. The words tumbled out before Martha could stop them. She told Elena about Lisa's addiction, about the night 2 years ago when the police had found the children alone in an apartment with no food, about the endless court appearances and the final custody ruling that had placed Tommy and Sarah in Martha's care. I thought I was done raising children, Martha confessed, her voice thick. But they needed me. And now, I need them too. Elena set down her wooden spoon and leaned against the counter. I understand that fear, she said softly. When Carlos left me pregnant with Miguel, I was terrified. Not just of being alone, but of failing my son. But you've done amazingly, Martha protested. Look at everything you've built. With help? Elena emphasized. My mother watched Miguel while I worked 3 jobs. My neighbor taught me basic coding when I couldn't afford classes. My first employee worked for equity when I couldn't pay a salary. She reached across the counter and squeezed Martha's hand. We're not meant to do life alone. From upstairs came the sound of children's laughter. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I'm so scared she'll take them away, she whispered. Lisa, she's their mother, but she's not well, and the kids need stability, Elena finished, which you're providing. Martha, look at me. She waited until Martha met her gaze. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens with Lisa, you have people in your corner now. The timer dinged, and Elena pulled the lasagna from the oven. Its cheesy aroma filled the kitchen as she called up the stairs. Kids, dinner's ready! The meal was a joy Martha hadn't experienced in years. The children chattered excitedly about Miguel's toys. The food disappeared amid enthusiastic compliments, and Elena kept everyone laughing with stories about her early business mishaps. And then, Elena gasped through giggles, the prototype shocked my investor, just a tiny zap, but his hair stood straight up. Did he still invest? Tommy asked, eyes wide. He did, Elena winked. Said any product with that much personality deserved a chance. After dinner, the children returned to their play while Martha helped Elena clean up. They fell into an easy rhythm, Elena washing, Martha drying. The familiar routine reminded Martha of countless evenings with her own mother, of conversations that had flowed as freely as the tap water. You know, Elena said, handing Martha a dripping plate. Miguel asks about Tommy and Sarah every day now. When can they come over? What games will they play? She smiled softly. He's never had siblings. It's good to see him so happy. Martha wiped the plate carefully. They talk about him too, and about you. She hesitated. Sarah asked if you were going to be her new aunt. Elena's hands stilled in the soapy water. She turned to Martha, her expression serious but warm. Martha, these past few weeks, seeing you with the seniors at work, watching you start that church class, getting to know you and the kids. She dried her hands on a towel and faced Martha fully. Your family now. The simple words hit Martha like a wave, and she couldn't hold back the tears that spilled down her cheeks. She tried to turn away, embarrassed, but Elena pulled her into a tight hug, dish towel and all. I mean it, Elena murmured. Family looks out for each other, and we're going to look out for you. Martha couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just held on, letting Elena's strength flow into her, feeling for the first time in years that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. Martha sat at her desk, reviewing the week's mentoring schedule. Her small office space, though modest, had become a sanctuary of sorts. Photos of her grandchildren shared space with thank you notes from seniors she'd helped. A potted peace lily, a gift from the tech support team, brightened the corner. The gentle tap on her door made her look up. Elena stood there, practically bouncing with excitement, a manila envelope clutched to her chest. Martha, do you have a minute? Elena's eyes sparkled with barely contained enthusiasm. Of course, dear. Martha removed her reading glasses, setting them beside her computer monitor. She'd grown comfortable with the machine now, though she still typed with careful precision rather than the rapid-fire pace of her younger colleagues. Elena closed the door and perched on the edge of the visitor's chair. I've done something, and I hope you won't be upset. She placed the envelope on Martha's desk, sliding it forward with 2 fingers. Martha's brow furrowed. What's this about? Open it, Elena urged, her smile widening. With careful fingers, Martha opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. Her eyes widened as she read the header. Women of Inspiration Awards, 2023 nomination form. Oh, Elena. Martha's voice trembled. You didn't. I absolutely did. Elena leaned forward, her expression earnest. Martha, do you know how many lives you've touched since you started here? The senior tech program you created at church has spread to 3 other congregations. Half our older employees come to you not just for computer help, but for life advice. Martha laughed nervously, her cheeks warming. I just listen, that's all. Anyone could do it. But they don't. Elena's voice grew firm. You do. You take the time, you show patience, you share your own struggles openly. Do you know what Janet from accounting told me last week? She said talking to you about her retirement fears helped her find the courage to start planning her next chapter instead of dreading it. Martha smoothed her hand over the nomination papers, her heart beating faster. The award was well known in their community, given annually to women who made significant impacts through leadership and service. Previous winners included business owners, nonprofit founders, and community activists. I'm just a grandmother who learned computers late in life, Martha protested weakly. Elena shook her head. You're so much more than that. You're proof that it's never too late to reinvent yourself, to find new purpose. She reached across the desk and squeezed Martha's hand. The ceremony is in 3 weeks. The committee already selected you as one of the finalists. Martha's breath caught. Finalists? But how? Because I submitted this last month, Elena admitted with a grin. I knew, if I told you earlier, you'd try to talk me out of it. Tears pricked at Martha's eyes. She thought of herself just months ago, standing humiliated at that bank counter. Now here she sat, in her own office, being nominated for an award she'd read about but never imagined receiving. The grandkids will be so proud, Elena added softly. They can watch their grandmother receive recognition for all the love and strength she puts into this world. Martha dabbed at her eyes with a tissue from her desk. I'll need something to wear, she said finally, managing a wobbly smile. That's the spirit. Elena jumped up, her enthusiasm bubbling over. We'll go shopping this weekend. My treat. Absolutely not, Martha said firmly. I have a few nice dresses at home. The kids can help me choose. Later that evening, Martha stood before her opened closet while Tommy and Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed. The 3 dresses she'd saved from church events hung neatly pressed. 1 navy, 1 forest green, and 1 deep burgundy. The red one, Grandma, Sarah exclaimed, bouncing on the bed. It makes you look like a queen. Tommy nodded sagely, his 10-year-old face serious. Plus, they take pictures at these things. Red looks good in pictures. Martha pulled out the burgundy dress, holding it against herself as she looked in the mirror. The classic cut still flattered her figure, and the color did warm her complexion. More importantly, she'd bought this dress herself, with her first paycheck from Elena's company. Try it on, Sarah pleaded. Martha shooed them out of the room for a moment to change. The dress slipped on easily, the fabric settling comfortably around her. When she opened the door, both children gasped dramatically. Beautiful, Sarah clapped her hands. You look like you deserve an award, Tommy declared, and Martha's heart swelled at the simple, profound confidence in his voice. Standing there in her bedroom, surrounded by her grandchildren's loving faces, Martha felt something shift inside her. The nervous flutter in her stomach gave way to a steady warmth. She turned to the mirror again, really looking at herself, not just at the dress, but at the woman wearing it. She saw the strength in her shoulders that had carried her through raising her daughter alone, then starting over with her grandchildren. She saw the gentleness in her eyes that drew people to confide in her. She saw the smile lines that spoke of joy, preserved despite hardship. Sarah hugged her waist. You're going to win, Grandma. I know it. Martha stroked her granddaughter's hair, remembering Elena's words about touching lives. Maybe that was what made someone worthy, not grand achievements, but small acts of kindness repeated day after day. The patience to teach someone elderly how to video chat with their grandchildren. The courage to share your own struggles so others felt less alone. The willingness to begin again, no matter your age. Tommy joined the hug from the other side. Can we come watch you get your award? Of course you can, Martha replied softly. You two are my inspiration. She gazed at their reflection in the mirror, this little family unit that had survived so much together. For the first time, she didn't see a woman who had failed to keep her own daughter on track, or someone who had to start over at 62. She saw someone worthy of recognition, someone who had turned hard circumstances into hope, not just for herself, but for others. The burgundy dress caught the evening light, rich and warm as possibility. The grand ballroom of the community center sparkled with strings of twinkling lights that draped from crystal chandeliers. Round tables dressed in cream-colored linens filled the space, each one adorned with centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the faces of attendees dressed in their finest evening wear. Martha sat at the front table, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. Her navy blue dress, borrowed from Elena, fit perfectly, making her feel both elegant and uncomfortable at the same time. She wasn't used to such finery. Her silver hair had been styled by Elena's personal hairdresser, and her granddaughter Jenny had insisted on adding just a touch of lipstick. "You look beautiful, Grandma," whispered Tommy, her grandson, who sat beside her in his Sunday best, his wild hair finely tamed with gel. Jenny nodded in agreement from her other side, wearing the pretty floral dress they'd found at the thrift store. Elena, stunning in a red cocktail dress, reached across the table and squeezed Martha's hand. "Just breathe," she said softly, bouncing her toddler son Marcus on her knee. "You've earned this moment." Martha's throat tightened. Had she? Just months ago she'd been standing in that bank line, empty account and empty hopes. Now here she was, surrounded by people who believed in her, nominated for an award she never dreamed possible. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor, stepped up to the podium. The lights dimmed slightly, and a hush fell over the crowd. Martha's heart thundered in her chest as the woman began speaking about the Women of Inspiration Awards. "Our next honoree," the announcer's voice rang clear, "has shown us that it's never too late to make a difference, that sometimes the most powerful transformations come not from grand gestures but from small acts of kindness multiplied day after day." On the large screen behind the podium, photos began to appear. Martha caught her breath. There she was, teaching a group of seniors how to use tablets. Another showed her helping an elderly gentleman navigate video calls with his grandchildren. She hardly recognized herself in these images. The woman looked so confident, so purposeful. Through her work at Ramirez Technologies and her volunteer efforts at First Baptist Church, she has helped dozens of seniors bridge the digital divide, finding new ways to connect with family and remain vital in today's workforce. Jenny grabbed Martha's hand and squeezed it tight. Tommy straightened in his chair, chest puffing with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Martha Ellison." The room erupted in applause. Martha felt frozen for a moment, until Elena's gentle push on her shoulder propelled her to her feet. Her legs felt wobbly as she made her way to the stage, careful not to trip on her dress. The steps seemed steeper than they had during the afternoon rehearsal. As she reached the top, the spotlight warm on her face, Martha turned to face the crowd. From this vantage point, she could see every table, every smiling face. In the front row, Elena was beaming, little Marcus clapping his tiny hands in imitation of the adults. Tommy and Jenny were standing, their faces glowing with joy and pride. But it wasn't just her family. There was Mr. Rodriguez, the janitor she'd first helped with the scheduling app, now teaching others himself. Mrs. Chen from her Sunday computer class, who could finally see her grandchildren in California through video calls. Even some of the young tech workers from Elena's office were there. The ones who'd initially seemed so intimidating but now sought her advice on communicating with older clients. The announcer handed Martha a beautiful crystal award, its weight solid and real in her hands. Standing before the microphone, Martha took a deep breath. The paper with her prepared speech crinkled in her pocket, but she left it there. Instead, she looked at her grandchildren's shining faces and spoke from her heart. 6 months ago, she began, her voice shaky but growing stronger, I stood in a bank line, feeling invisible and worthless. A ripple of empathetic murmurs moved through the crowd. But one person saw me, really saw me. And sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to extend a hand, to believe in you before you remember how to believe in yourself. Elena wiped at her eyes, bouncing Marcus gently on her knee. That belief, Martha continued, it's like a seed. It grows. And suddenly you find yourself doing things you never imagined possible. Teaching others, making a difference. Proving that age is just a number, and it's never too late to start again. She lifted the award slightly, watching it catch the light. This isn't just for me, she said, her voice clear and strong now. This is for every grandmother who refuses to give up. For every senior citizen who feels left behind by technology but keeps trying anyway. For every person who thinks their time for making a difference has passed. Martha paused, looking directly at her grandchildren. Tommy, Jenny, this is for you too. Because you never stopped believing in your old grandma, even when she'd stopped believing in herself. Tears streamed down Jenny's face as she clapped, while Tommy tried to discreetly wipe his eyes with his sleeve. Elena had given up trying to hide her tears, letting them fall freely as she applauded. The crystal award caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the ceiling. Martha held it higher, her voice carrying across the now silent room as she whispered into the microphone. This is not just for me, it's for every grandmother who refuses to give up. The applause that followed was deafening. Through tear-blurred eyes, Martha saw the entire room rise to their feet. Her students from the church, her colleagues from work, her community, all standing, all cheering. But most precious of all were those faces in the front row, her grandchildren, beaming with pride, and Elena, the woman who had seen possibility where others saw only problems, all of them clapping wildly as if their lives depended on it. Martha hummed softly as she packed lunch boxes for her grandchildren. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching the gleam of her Women of Inspiration Award on the shelf. She had placed it there just last night after the ceremony, right next to the kids' school photos. The sight of it still made her heart swell with pride. A sharp knock at the door interrupted her peaceful morning routine. Martha's stomach tightened. She recognized that particular rhythm. Opening the door revealed Lisa, her daughter, looking more disheveled than usual. Her hair was uncombed, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Mom, I need the kids," Lisa blurted out, pushing past Martha into the house. Her movements were jerky, her eyes darting around the room. "Just for the day. I want to take them to the park." Martha's chest tightened. "Lisa, honey, they have school today, you know that." "So what?" Lisa's voice rose. "I'm their mother. I can take them wherever I want." She stormed into the kitchen, yanking open cupboards and slamming them shut. "Where are their cereal bowls? The ones I bought them last Christmas?" "Lisa, please calm down," Martha said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let's talk about this. You're not." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "You're not yourself right now." "Don't tell me who I am." Lisa whirled around, knocking over the lunch boxes. Peanut butter sandwiches and apple slices scattered across the floor. "You think you're so perfect now, don't you? With your fancy new job and your stupid award? You're trying to replace me." The children appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. 10-year-old Tommy held his little sister Sarah's hand, their faces pale with worry. "Mom?" Tommy's voice quavered. "What's wrong?" Lisa's expression shifted instantly, becoming sugar-sweet. "Nothing's wrong, baby. We're going to the park today. No boring school. Won't that be fun?" Before Martha could intervene, Lisa had grabbed both children's hands and was pulling them toward the door. Martha stepped forward, her heart racing. "Lisa, stop this right now. You can't tell me what to do anymore." Lisa's voice cracked with hysteria. She released the children's hands to fumble in her purse, dropping it. Contents spilled across the floor, makeup, loose change, and something that made Martha's blood run cold. A small bag of white powder. "Kids, go to your rooms," Martha commanded, her voice firm despite her trembling hands. "Now." Tommy pulled his sister away, their footsteps hurrying down the hall. Lisa scrambled to gather her things, shoving them back into her purse. "You need help, sweetheart," Martha said softly. "Please, let me help you." "I don't need anything from you," Lisa stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Martha sank into a kitchen chair, her legs weak. She needed to call Elena to ask for advice. But before she could reach for her phone, Mrs. Henderson from next door burst in through the back door, her face pale. "Martha! The children! Lisa took them. I saw her driving away with them just now." Martha's world tilted sideways. She ran to check the children's rooms. Empty. They must have gone out the back door while she was distracted. Her hands shook as she dialed 911. The next few hours passed in a blur of police questions and frantic phone calls. Elena arrived, bringing coffee and steady support. Finally, late in the afternoon, a police officer called, too. They had found the children at a rundown motel on the edge of town. Lisa had left them alone in the room while she ran an errand. Martha and Elena rushed to the motel. Tommy and Sarah sat on plastic chairs in the office, looking small and scared under the fluorescent lights. A police officer stood nearby, along with a stern-faced woman who introduced herself as Miss Reynolds from Child Protective Services. "Grandma?" The children ran to Martha, wrapping their arms around her waist. She held them close, breathing in their familiar scent, trying to stop her hands from shaking. "Mrs. Ellison," Miss Reynolds said, her voice professionally detached. "We need to discuss the situation." She gestured toward a private corner of the office. Martha reluctantly released the children to Elena's care and followed the caseworker. Her Women of Inspiration Award felt like a cruel joke now as Miss Reynolds outlined the gravity of the situation. "This incident raises serious concerns about the children's safety," Miss Reynolds explained, consulting her clipboard. "While you've provided care until now, we need to ensure there's lasting stability. Your daughter's actions today put the children at significant risk." "I'm their grandmother," Martha whispered. "I've been taking care of them." "And we acknowledge that," Miss Reynolds interrupted. "However, given the family history and today's events, we need to evaluate all options. Unless you can demonstrate consistent stability and proper safeguards against their mother's interference, we may need to consider temporary foster care placement." The room seemed to spin. Martha clutched her award, which she'd grabbed from home in her rush to reach the children. The metal felt cold against her palms. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "They're all I have." Miss Reynolds' expression softened slightly. "We'll schedule a formal evaluation. In the meantime, document everything: your employment, your support system, any interactions with their mother. We need to see that you can provide not just love, but security." Martha nodded numbly, tears sliding down her cheeks as she looked at her grandchildren. Tommy met her gaze, his young face too serious for his age. Sarah had fallen asleep in Elena's lap, exhausted from the day's trauma. The award in Martha's hands, the symbol of her fresh start, her new confidence, trembled along with her fingers as the full weight of possible loss pressed down on her shoulders. Everything she'd built could crumble, and her grandchildren, her precious reasons for living, might be taken away. She looked down at the engraving that just last night had filled her with such pride. Women of Inspiration Award, Martha Ellison, for courage and leadership. The words blurred through her tears as the reality of her situation sank in. All her recent achievements felt hollow in the face of this threat to her family's unity. The morning after the caseworker's visit, Martha stared blankly at her untouched coffee. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence, marking another sleepless night gone by. Her Women of Inspiration Award sat face down on the counter. She couldn't bear to look at it anymore. The pride she had felt just days ago seemed like a cruel joke now. Her granddaughter Sarah's voice drifted from upstairs. "Grandma, have you seen my blue notebook?" The sound made Martha's heart clench. How many more mornings would she hear those precious voices in her home? "Check under your bed, sweetheart," Martha called back, her voice cracking. She tried to inject cheerfulness into her tone, but it felt hollow. The kids still went to school, still did their homework, still played and laughed. But Martha moved through the days like a ghost. She forgot to eat unless the children reminded her. Dark circles deepened under her eyes, and her clothes began to hang loose on her frame. At work, she went through the motions. Her senior tech students noticed the change. "Are you feeling all right, dear?" Mrs. Peterson asked during one session. Martha just nodded and turned back to the computer screen, afraid that speaking would release the tears she constantly held back. Elena noticed too. She'd stop by Martha's desk with concerned looks, but Martha would quickly find excuses to be elsewhere. The thought of accepting help, of burdening anyone else with her problems, made her chest tight with anxiety. The house felt different now. Even with the children's toys scattered about and their artwork on the fridge, a heavy stillness had settled in. Martha found herself standing in their doorways at night, watching them sleep, memorizing their peaceful faces. Little Tommy's teddy bear tucked under his chin, Sarah's hair spread across her pillow like a dark fan. She stopped cooking proper meals, serving sandwiches and cereal instead. The kitchen, once filled with the aroma of home-cooked dinners and the sounds of family chatter, stayed quiet. The cookie jar sat empty. Martha couldn't remember the last time she'd baked. One evening, while folding laundry, she found one of Lisa's old t-shirts mixed in with the children's clothes. The sight of it sent her to her knees, clutching the fabric to her chest. Where had she gone wrong with Lisa? How could she protect her grandchildren from the same fate? The caseworker's words echoed in her mind. Unless you can prove lasting stability, but what did that mean? Her job at Elena's company, her volunteer work at church, her modest but well-kept home. Wasn't that stability? The uncertainty ate at her, making sleep impossible. She started avoiding phone calls, letting them go to voicemail. The church group asked about her absence. Her senior students sent worried messages, but Martha couldn't face them. What if they all saw her as she saw herself now, a failure who couldn't even keep her family together? The children tried their best to cheer her up. Sarah brought her drawings from school, and Tommy offered her his favorite action figure to make you feel better, Grandma. Their sweet gestures only made the pain sharper. She smiled for them, but as soon as they turned away, the smile crumbled. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Martha sat alone in the dark living room. The silence pressed in around her like a physical weight. The street lamp outside cast long shadows across the floor, and she couldn't remember when she'd last turned on the lights just for herself. A soft knock at the door startled her. She considered not answering, but the knock came again, more insistent this time. Through the peephole, she saw Elena standing on her porch, holding what looked like takeout containers. Martha's hand trembled on the doorknob. She almost pretended not to be home, but something in Elena's determined stance told her the younger woman wouldn't leave easily. When she opened the door, Elena didn't wait for an invitation. She walked straight in, set the food on the coffee table, and turned to face Martha. In the dim light from outside, Martha could see the concern and determination in her friend's eyes. "You haven't been eating," Elena stated simply. It wasn't a question. Martha wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling cold. "I'm fine," she whispered, but the words sounded unconvincing even to her own ears. Elena stepped closer, her presence warm and solid in the darkened room. She placed her hand firmly on Martha's shoulder, the touch anchoring her to the present moment. "You're not alone," Elena said, her voice steady and sure. "We'll fight this together." Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard at 6 a.m., her office still dark except for her computer screen's glow. She paused only to sip her coffee, determination etched on her face as she typed email after email. Her son slept peacefully on the office couch, wrapped in his favorite blanket. The subject line was simple. "Emergency, Martha Ellison needs us." As the sun rose, responses began flooding in. First from Sarah, the elderly janitor Martha had helped with the scheduling app. Then from James, the retired accountant who'd learned to video chat with his grandchildren in Martha's church class. One by one, Elena's inbox filled with people eager to help. By 9 a.m., Elena's office buzzed with activity. She'd cleared the conference room, where volunteers now sat shoulder to shoulder, writing heartfelt letters. The air hummed with purpose as pens scratched against paper and keyboards clicked. "Remember," Elena called out, standing at the front of the room, "be specific about how Martha helped you. The caseworker needs to see the real impact she has on this community." Sarah, her gray hair neat, despite the early hour, read her letter aloud. "Before Mrs. Ellison taught me that computer program, I was afraid I'd lose my job. Now I'm training other cleaning staff. She didn't just teach me technology, she gave me my dignity back." Heads nodded around the room. A young tech worker raised his hand. Martha helped my grandmother join our weekly family video calls. Mom says Grandma hasn't smiled so much in years. Elena watched as more people arrived. Church members clutching coffee cups, seniors from Martha's tech class helping each other up the office steps, even the barista from the grocery store cafe where she and Martha first talked. By noon, the conference room table disappeared under stacks of letters and printed emails. Elena sorted them carefully, creating a thick folder of testimonials. But she knew they needed more. "We need to show how stable Martha's life is now," Elena announced. "Who can speak about her work performance, her reliability, her home environment?" Hands shot up across the room. The office manager volunteered her attendance records. The church coordinator offered photos of Martha's weekly classes. A neighbor promised to write about how well cared for the grandchildren were, always clean and on time for school. Elena checked her watch and grabbed her phone. "The community center has an open meeting room tonight. I'm calling an emergency meeting. Can everyone spread the word?" The room erupted in activity. People pulled out phones, sent texts, and made calls. Social media lit up with private messages and group chats. Elena watched with growing hope as her small idea transformed into a community movement. At 7 p.m., Martha walked into the community center, looking tired and small. Elena had convinced her to come by saying simply, "Trust me, you need to be here." Martha stopped short in the doorway. The meeting room, usually empty on weekday evenings, was packed. Familiar faces turned toward her: co-workers, church members, neighbors, and students from her tech classes. Even the bank teller who had helped her that difficult morning weeks ago sat in the back row. What is this?" Martha whispered, her hands trembling. Elena guided her to a chair in the front. "This is your community, Martha. We're here to fight for you and your grandchildren." One by one, people stood to speak. Sarah described how Martha stayed late to help her learn the scheduling app, patient even when Sarah got frustrated. James talked about how Martha's tech classes helped him reconnect with his family across the country. A teenage girl stood up, her voice shaky but clear. "Mrs. Ellison helped my grandmother set up Facebook. Now she can see my school pictures and send me messages. I didn't know how lonely Grandma was until she could finally reach out." The bank teller spoke about Martha's grace under pressure. Neighbors praised her dedication to her grandchildren. Co-workers detailed her reliability and growing confidence at work. "She organized a carpool system for our senior tech classes," the church coordinator added. "She thinks of everything to help people succeed." Elena watched as Martha's shoulders began to shake. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but these weren't the tears of despair from recent days. These were tears of recognition, of finally seeing herself through others' eyes. A retired teacher stood up, leaning on her cane. "Martha showed me I wasn't too old to learn. Now I help tutor children online. She gave me purpose again. She helped me fill out job applications," another woman called out. "I start work next week." The testimonials continued, each one painting a picture of a woman who had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of countless others. Martha sat very still, tears flowing freely now, as person after person stood to share their story. Elena squeezed Martha's hand and whispered, "See? You're not alone, not even close." The room hummed with emotion as dozens of voices joined together, sharing stories of how one woman's kindness had rippled through their community. Martha wept silently in her chair, but now her tears carried the weight of revelation, the stunning realization that she had built something precious and real, a web of love and support that would not let her fall. Martha's hands trembled as she smoothed her navy dress, the same one she'd worn to receive her award just weeks ago. Now she sat in the sterile courtroom, the wooden bench hard beneath her. Elena's warm presence beside her was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Their lawyer, Mrs. Bennett, arranged papers on the table with quiet efficiency. She'd been a gift from Elena, who insisted on covering all legal expenses. "The best for my family," Elena had said firmly, brooking no argument. The courtroom doors opened and closed as people filed in quietly. Martha didn't dare turn around, but Elena squeezed her hand and whispered, "They're all here for you." Judge Harrison entered, his robes swishing as he took his seat. His face remained impassive as he reviewed the papers before him. "In the matter of custody for minors, James and Sarah Ellison," he began, his voice filling the quiet room. "I see we have multiple testimonies to review." Martha's chest tightened. She thought of her grandchildren, waiting at Elena's house with her son and a trusted babysitter. They'd asked this morning why they couldn't come. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? "First testimony," Judge Harrison announced, "from Sarah Chen, head janitor at Ramirez Technologies." Martha's eyes widened as Sarah's words were read aloud. "Mrs. Ellison didn't just teach me how to use the scheduling app, she showed me I wasn't too old to learn, too old to matter. Now I'm teaching other cleaning staff, and our whole team is more efficient. But more than that, we feel valued. That's what Martha does. She makes people feel seen." Tears pricked at Martha's eyes. She remembered Sarah's frustrated face that first day, how it had transformed into joy when she finally mastered the app. More testimonies followed. James Watson, from her church tech class, described how Martha's patience had helped him connect with his grandchildren through video calls for the first time. "My family lives across the country," his letter read. "Thanks to Mrs. Ellison, I now read bedtime stories to my grandkids every night." The church pastor spoke of Martha's volunteer work, how she'd built a bridge between generations. The younger church members had started a program pairing with seniors for weekly tech support and companionship. Martha's colleagues from Elena's company testified about her impact on workplace culture, how she'd transformed the office into a more inclusive environment where experience was valued alongside innovation. Then came the harder parts. The Child Protective Services report detailed Lisa's recent relapse, the incident where the children had been left alone in an unsafe situation. Martha's heart ached for her daughter, even now. Lisa's empty chair in the courtroom spoke volumes. The CPS worker stood to give her assessment. "While the family situation is complicated," she stated, "Mrs. Ellison has provided a stable, nurturing environment for the children. They're well-adjusted, performing above grade level in school, and show strong emotional security despite their mother's challenges." Elena was called to testify next. She walked to the stand with quiet confidence, her heels clicking on the floor. Under oath, she spoke about Martha's character, her work ethic, and the positive changes she'd brought to countless lives. "Martha Ellison came into my company at a crucial time," Elena testified, her voice clear and strong. "We needed someone who could bridge the gap between traditional values and modern technology. But she gave us so much more. She showed us that innovation isn't just about new ideas. It's about bringing everyone along, leaving no one behind." Elena's voice softened as she continued. "I've seen her with her grandchildren. They're thriving under her care. She's given them structure, love, and most importantly, hope. In my position as CEO, I've worked with many people, but rarely have I met someone with Martha's combination of resilience and compassion." The financial reports came next. Martha's steady income from her job, her recent raise, the small savings she'd begun to build. The children's school records showed perfect attendance, improved grades, participation in after-school activities. Letters from teachers described James's growing confidence in math, Sarah's leadership in her reading group. Their counselor noted how stable they'd become in Martha's care, how they were finally processing their mother's absence in healthy ways. Through it all, Martha sat straight-backed, though her hands kept worrying at her handkerchief. Elena remained a steady presence beside her, occasionally passing her water or offering a reassuring smile. Finally, Judge Harrison looked up from the stack of testimonies. His expression remained neutral, but his voice carried a note of consideration. "This is a complex case," he stated. "While the community support for Mrs. Ellison is impressive and her recent stability is noteworthy, we must ensure all aspects are thoroughly evaluated." He shuffled his papers, making notes. "I'm postponing the final decision until we can conduct additional home studies and receive updated reports on the mother's status." He looked directly at Martha for the first time. "However, I want to note for the record the extraordinary show of community support and Mrs. Ellison's demonstrated commitment to providing a stable environment for these children." The judge's gavel fell, and Martha felt her shoulders sag. Not a victory, not yet, but not a defeat either. Elena's arm came around her shoulders, steady and strong. "All rise," the bailiff called out, and Martha stood on shaky legs. The uncertainty still stretched ahead, but she wasn't facing it alone. Behind her, she could hear the quiet murmur of her supporters, her community, her village, gathering close. The evening shadows stretched across Martha's small living room as she tidied up after dinner. Her grandchildren, Tommy and Sarah, sat quietly doing homework at the kitchen table, a rare stillness that made her heart ache. The uncertainty hanging over their heads seemed to dampen even their usual cheerful chatter. "Time for bed, sweethearts," Martha called softly, her voice wavering slightly. The children gathered their books without protest. Another sign of how the stress had affected them. In Tommy's room, Martha helped him arrange his stuffed animals just so, the way he liked them. His favorite teddy bear, worn from years of love, took its place of honor by his pillow. Sarah clutched her well-loved blanket, the one Martha had made when she was born, as they moved to her room next door. "Can we pray together tonight, Grandma?" Sarah asked, her small voice filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Like we used to do every night before all this happened?" Martha's throat tightened. They hadn't kept up with their nightly prayers lately. She'd been too overwhelmed, too scared to find the words. But looking at their hopeful faces, she knew they needed this moment of connection more than ever. "Of course, sweetheart, let's all kneel together." The three of them gathered beside Sarah's bed, kneeling on the soft carpet. Martha felt Tommy's small hand slip into hers on one side, Sarah's on the other. The familiar position brought a rush of memories. Countless nights of prayers, hopes and dreams, shared in this very spot. "Dear Lord," Martha began, her voice barely above a whisper, "we come to you tonight with heavy hearts, seeking your strength and guidance." She paused, struggling to keep her composure. "Please help Grandma," Tommy added suddenly, his voice clear and confident. "She takes such good care of us and makes the best mac and cheese in the whole world." Despite everything, Martha couldn't help but smile. Sarah squeezed her hand and added, "And please let us stay together. We love our grandma so much." The children's simple, heartfelt words broke something inside Martha. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she pulled them both close. "We don't want to leave you, Grandma," they whispered in unison, their arms wrapping tightly around her. Martha held them, breathing in the scent of their freshly washed hair, memorizing the feeling of their warm little bodies against hers. "I love you both so much," she managed to say. "No matter what happens, that will never change." After tucking them in with extra hugs and kisses, Martha retreated to her own bedroom. The house felt eerily quiet, each tick of the clock on her bedside table a reminder of how precious their time together might be. She sat on the edge of her bed, finally allowing herself to really cry. Silent tears that spoke of fear, exhaustion, and a mother's desperate love. The sudden ring of her phone made her jump. Martha quickly wiped her eyes and reached for it, not wanting the sound to wake the children. Elena's name glowed on the screen. "Hello?" Martha answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Martha." Elena's warm voice came through, filled with an energy that made Martha sit up straighter. "I'm sorry to call so late, but I couldn't wait. I'll be coming by tomorrow morning. I have some news to share." "Good news." Martha's heart skipped a beat. "Elena, please, trust me," Elena interrupted gently. "Just hold on until tomorrow. Get some rest. You're not alone in this fight, remember?" After hanging up, Martha sat in the darkness of her room, Elena's words echoing in her mind. The promise of good news felt like a lifeline thrown into stormy waters. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but, for the first time in days, she felt something stir in her chest, a fragile, tentative hope. She walked to her window, looking out at the quiet street below. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping across her front yard where the children's bikes stood propped against the porch. Such ordinary things, yet suddenly so precious. Martha found herself walking back to the children's rooms, just to check on them one more time. Tommy had kicked off his covers as usual, and she gently tucked him back in. Sarah still clutched her blanket, her face peaceful in sleep. The sight of them, so innocent and vulnerable, strengthened her resolve. Back in her room, Martha changed into her nightgown and slipped under the covers. She thought about Elena's call, clinging to the promise of tomorrow's news like a talisman. Whatever it was, she knew Elena wouldn't have called if it wasn't important. That woman had become such a blessing in their lives, appearing just when Martha had thought all hope was lost. As she lay there in the darkness, Martha remembered something her late husband used to say, "The darkest hour is just before dawn." She had to believe that was true now. She had to believe that somewhere, beyond the fear and uncertainty, a new dawn was waiting. The clock ticked steadily beside her, marking time's passage. Martha closed her eyes, holding on to hope with all her might, knowing that tomorrow might bring the answers they so desperately needed. The courthouse buzzed with nervous energy as Martha sat on the hard wooden bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Elena sat beside her, a steady presence in her tailored navy suit. The grandchildren waited outside with Elena's mother, spared from the tension of this moment. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long rectangles across the polished floor. Martha smoothed her best dress, the same one she'd worn to receive her award, though that happy evening now felt like a lifetime ago. Her heart drummed against her ribs as she watched the bailiff call the court to order. Judge Harrison entered, his face unreadable as he took his seat. The room fell silent, and Martha could hear the soft whir of the ceiling fans above. She felt the presence of her supporters filling the benches behind her, her co-workers, church members, and the seniors she'd taught computer skills to, all here to stand with her. In the matter of custody regarding the minor children, Thomas and Sarah Collins, Judge Harrison began, his voice steady and clear. Martha held her breath. "I have reviewed all testimonies, character witnesses, and evidence of stability." He paused, adjusting his reading glasses. Martha's fingers trembled as she gripped the wooden railing in front of her. Elena reached over and squeezed her shoulder gently. "The court has taken into consideration the mother's continued absence and documented instability," the judge continued. "We have also carefully evaluated Mrs. Martha Ellison's proven record of providing a nurturing, stable environment for her grandchildren." Martha's vision blurred with tears as she remembered the past months. The empty bank account, Elena's kindness, the new job, the lives she'd touched, the community that had embraced her. Through it all, her grandchildren had been her anchor, her reason to keep pushing forward. Furthermore, Judge Harrison said, the overwhelming support from the community demonstrates Mrs. Ellison's exceptional character and positive influence, not only on her grandchildren, but on the wider community as well. He cleared his throat, and Martha's heart seemed to stop. Therefore, it is the decision of this court to grant permanent custody of Thomas and Sarah Collins to their grandmother, Martha Ellison. The words took a moment to sink in. Then a wave of joy crashed over Martha, as quiet applause erupted from behind her. She covered her mouth with trembling hands as tears spilled down her cheeks. Elena hugged her tightly, and Martha could hear familiar voices celebrating behind her. "Order in the court," the bailiff called, though Judge Harrison's slight smile suggested he didn't mind the brief display of emotion. "Mrs. Ellison," the judge addressed her directly, his voice gentler now. "This court recognizes the tremendous sacrifice and love you've shown in raising your grandchildren. Your recent achievements prove that it's never too late to build a better life, not just for yourself, but for others as well." Martha stood on shaky legs, managing a tearful, "Thank you, Your Honor." "The court will maintain jurisdiction," Judge Harrison continued. "But given the stability you've demonstrated, I see no reason for frequent oversight. You may take your grandchildren home today, Mrs. Ellison. Court is adjourned." The bang of his gavel seemed to release all the tension from Martha's body. She turned to find herself surrounded by friends and supporters. Mrs. Chen from her computer class was wiping away tears. Bob, the janitor she'd first helped with the scheduling app, gave her a thumbs up from the back of the room. Elena guided her through the crowd toward the courthouse doors. "Let's go tell those kids the good news," she said, her own eyes shining with happy tears. In the hallway, Tommy and Sarah jumped up from their seats as soon as they saw Martha. She opened her arms wide, and they ran into them, creating a tight family embrace that said more than words ever could. "We get to stay with you?" Sarah whispered against Martha's shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart," Martha managed through her tears. "Forever and always." Tommy looked up at her with serious eyes. "Promise?" "It's official now," Martha said, touching his cheek. The judge made sure of it. Elena's mother handed Martha a tissue, and slowly their group began moving toward the courthouse exit. Martha's co-workers and friends patted her back and offered congratulations as they passed. The seniors from her computer class had made a hand-drawn sign that read, "We love you, Martha," in wobbly letters. As they approached the large double doors, Martha took each grandchild by the hand. She paused for a moment, remembering that terrible day at the bank when she'd felt so small, so invisible. Now here she was, surrounded by love, her future secure, her purpose clear. The doors swung open, and bright sunlight streamed in, warming their faces. Martha squeezed her grandchildren's hands, and together they stepped out into the brilliant morning. The light caught Sarah's hair like a halo, and Tommy stood taller, as if he too felt the weight of uncertainty lifting from his shoulders. On the courthouse steps, Martha blinked in the sunshine, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Her grandchildren's hands were warm in hers, and their future, once so fragile, now stretched out before them, solid and bright and full of promise. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Martha stood before the small crowd gathered outside the newly renovated building. Sunlight caught the silver in her hair, making it shimmer as she adjusted her simple navy blazer, a gift from Elena for this special occasion. A banner stretched across the entrance read, "New Horizons Foundation, building bridges across generations." Elena stepped up to the podium first, her professional demeanor softened by the genuine warmth in her eyes. "When I met Martha Ellison 6 months ago, I thought I was just helping someone in need. Little did I know she would teach me more about courage and dignity than anyone I've ever met." Martha's cheeks flushed as she watched her friend speak. Her grandchildren, Tommy and Sarah, sat in the front row, dressed in their Sunday best, beaming with pride. The boy from Elena's tech company, who had helped set up the sound system, gave them both high fives. "This foundation," Elena continued, "born from Martha's example, will help seniors discover their value in our digital age while supporting single mothers who need a chance to build their dreams. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you." When it was Martha's turn to speak, her hands trembled slightly as she approached the microphone, but her voice rang clear and strong. "6 months ago, I stood in a bank line, feeling invisible and worthless." She paused, meeting the encouraging gazes of her former tech students scattered throughout the audience. "Today, I stand here to tell you that no one, no matter their age or circumstances, is ever truly without value." The crowd applauded as Martha and Elena together cut the red ribbon. Pastor Reynolds from the church offered a blessing, and the doors opened to reveal the renovated space, computer stations, training rooms, and a cheerful daycare area where parents could leave their children while attending classes or working. During the reception, Martha moved through the crowd, her confidence evident in every step. She stopped to chat with Mrs. Henderson, one of her first tech students, who was now volunteering to teach other seniors. "Who would have thought," Mrs. Henderson chuckled, "that I'd go from being afraid of my smartphone to teaching others how to use it?" Elena's little boy tugged at Martha's skirt, offering her a cookie from the refreshment table. She knelt down to his level, remembering how far they'd all come since that first day in the grocery store cafe. The warmth of community surrounded her, not just supporters, but family. As the afternoon wore on, Martha found herself standing with Elena near the foundation's mission statement mounted on the wall. "From empty to overflowing, building hope one life at a time," it read in elegant letters. "You know," Elena said softly, "when I started my company, I thought success meant bigger profits and fancier offices. But you helped me see that true success is measured in lives changed." Martha squeezed her hand. "And you helped me see that it's never too late for a new chapter." The rest of the day passed in a blur of congratulations and well wishes. By evening, Martha's feet ached from standing, but her heart felt light as she drove home with Tommy and Sarah chattering excitedly in the back seat. At home, the familiar routine of bedtime felt different somehow. more precious, more secure. Tommy showed her his drawing of the foundation's opening ceremony, complete with stick figures of all their new family. Sarah had written a poem about her grandmother for school, which she insisted on reading aloud one more time. Martha helped them into their pajamas, breathing in the scent of clean laundry and children's shampoo. The house that had once felt heavy with worry now rang with laughter and hope. She tucked Tommy in first, smoothing his cowlick just as she had done since he was a toddler. Then Sarah, who asked for just one more hug 3 times before settling down. Standing in the doorway of their shared bedroom, Martha watched their peaceful faces in the soft glow of the nightlight. The worry about losing them had faded, replaced by the certainty of tomorrow's sunrise, of more bedtime stories, of countless moments yet to come. She switched off the main light, her heart full to bursting. In the gentle darkness, Martha whispered into the quiet room, "My account may have been empty once, but now my life is full beyond measure. What would you do if you were in their place?" Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Martha Ellison, I hand-picked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.